Everybody, it's Brian Shannon from alphatrends.net. Today is Sunday, the 6th of December, 2020. I've got a little bit of time here and I wanted to take a look at some of these EV stocks. Obviously, the leader there, hands down, is Tesla. I'm not really going to talk about that from a trade perspective as far as new money because we've just had this big run here in the last 3 weeks from 400 to 600, up 50% without really any correction. Instead, I'm going to focus on three groups of stocks. One is what I consider the A setups for tomorrow, and then some other ones that need a little bit of extra time to set up, and then four stocks to avoid in this group. We're going to look at 15 stocks, so let's start alphabetically with the A list, AYRO. When I say the A list, there are four stocks in that. AYRO, BLNK, GP, and Solo. And these are the ones I think represent the best opportunity for trading early this week. First things to look at, up here you can see a couple of fundamental pieces of information. The average daily volume, I look at a 20-day average, is 16 million shares for AYRO. Next earnings report, February 5th. So we don't have a problem in terms of liquidity or an unexpected earnings report coming. Here's the longer term chart. And this might be, I actually don't know much about these companies. It might be, that it was just a garbage company and now it's a SPAC that turned into an EV. You can do the fundamental research. I'm strictly speaking of the technicals here. When I put a volume weighted average price on that peak in 2019, you can see how it held as resistance here and then support just recently on this pullback. Now on the daily time frame, you can see that's also the year to date. That's that thick blue year to date volume weighted average price, and it's above a rising 20-day moving average. So what we want to do is drill down to a 30-minute time frame. And here what we see is the 5-day moving average is still declining. So for all of these stocks, what I want to see, and I'm going to take off the after hours just so it's not distracting here. I want to see the 5-day moving average flat to advancing before the low risk purchase is made. Now I think that this was a pretty good little shakeout, and what I'd like to see here develop here in the next day or two is something that looks along the lines of this, and then it breaks this little band of resistance, so something like this, and then if it were to get going right at this point, I would want to get involved with a stop then underneath the most recent relevant higher low, which if it does trade in the way, a similar way to what I'm outlining, would be below this level. People ask me, what's your price target? My price target is always the same. It's higher for a long and lower for a short. What we want to do is we want to then raise our stop underneath the successive higher lows, and maybe we get stopped out somewhere over in here. Maybe we got stopped out right there as it undercut that level. Make the trade your own for your time frame. Let's take a look at the next one, which is blank, BLNK. This is Blink Charging. They do, charging of the EVs, basically. It's had big runs in the past. Now look at the personality of all of these stocks when you get involved. They can trade kind of psychotically. That is, they have these massive run-ups, but they can also fail very quickly. Now, with the current EV craze, I don't think that's going to happen with this stock, but be aware, risk management is always job number one. It's certainly a possibility. It was up on a nice increase in volume, so the volume pattern is what some people might call delicious. It was up on big volume, lighter volume as it consolidates, holding above a rising 2050 200-day moving average, 17 million shares average daily volume, earnings not due out till April 1st. Hope that's not a joke. My joke was terrible, but by the way, the volume weighted average price from the peak might be something that does offer supply if we get that first type of rally, so be aware of it. So if we get the 5-day moving average to flatten out and it moves up, that would be a good place maybe to consider taking a portion of your new entries off if it does set up. But BLNK is looking like it's ready. It's pulled back. The arrow is pulled back. It's ready to be released. If you want a little bit extra juice on this trade, you could go with their warrants, BLNKW. But you take a look up here, the average daily volume is only 218,000 shares. So be aware of the risk. GP, this one, Green Power Motor Company, is pretty interesting in that it pulled back not only the rising 20-day moving average, that's the thin blue line, but the thick blue line is the year-to-date volume weighted average price that I have on all my charts starting right there. I also have a rising 50-day moving average and a rising 200-day moving average. If either of those moving averages was declining, I wouldn't want to have anything to do with it. So when we see this daily chart, it had this big run up, and subsequent pullback was on lighter volume relative to the advance. So let's take a look at the 30-minute time frame. Let's just delete that. Where's our month-to-date volume-weighted average price? And you can see the slope of the 5-day moving average is a little bit more dramatically lower here. And we've got a couple of volume-weighted average price levels overhead to be aware of. Here's what I think could happen with this stock. I think maybe it runs up to 2021, pulls back, works its way through that volume-weighted average price, and does something like this. So where would I want to buy it? I would actually want to buy it right here. I don't care about this trade. Maybe that's a good trade and maybe that's your time frame. I'm not here telling anyone what to do. I'm outlining potential scenarios. So if it were to run up there, then I think the next objective, the first potential level of resistance would be right there. I might take a little bit off if I didn't get stopped out with a stop under here, but this is one definitely to keep an eye on, as is Solo, S-O-L-O. This is the fourth of the ones that I consider to be on my A list, A-Y-R-O, B-L-N-K, G-P, and Solo. Solo, this one, beautiful breakout on the longer term time frame. That prior band of resistance was tested and so far seems to be holding on this weekly time frame. On the daily time frame, again, we look up, earnings aren't due till March 24th. Trades 42 million shares a day. Big volume on the rally, lighter volume on this pullback. Relatively, it's right at the rising 20-day moving average. That often is an area where buyers are found. The month-to-date volume-weighted average price from November, we're actually just going to take that off because I'm finding it a little bit distracting here. What we want to do is just look at the 5-day moving average. And again, it's lower. Here's what we want to look at, though. The volume-weighted average price from that move and from this peak, well, they're still overhead. So they're potential levels of supply. What I would want to see here for this stock to develop into a low-risk trade, maybe it does something like this. 5-day moving average starts to flatten out. That volume weighted average price acts as the initial resistance here, maybe Monday and Tuesday of this week, and then it ramps higher quickly up to this level. Then perhaps we see a little shakeout like this, and then it's off to the races once again. That's the type of activity I'm looking for. If I were to purchase right here, let's say, then where would my stop go? Underneath this level right here. So that's our A list of EV stocks. Other ones to keep an eye on, BE. I like Bloom Energy a lot. The problem here is that it started going on Friday. It took off beyond that little band of resistance right here. This is where you wanted to own the stock with a stop underneath here. So for BE, what we do is we put a volume weighted average price off of Friday's low, and what we might see is a pullback first thing in the morning to that volume weighted average price, and then Monday's volume weighted average price does this. Well, this is where I would want to be a buyer of this stock, right here as it gets back above the VWAP. So we might see a pinch between the 1 and 2 day volume weighted average price tomorrow. If I was a purchaser here and I wanted to be really aggressive with my stop, I would put it underneath the low of the day. If I wanted to give it a little bit more room, I would put it underneath this little pullback low. If I really wanted to give it more room, under here, and if I was really just going to take a massive stop under here, don't do that, is what I would suggest, though. Have your stop underneath one of these higher lows. But BE is a pullback candidate to the 2-day, that it will be the 2-day tomorrow volume weighted average price, and then as it gets back above the daily VWAP, that could be a good place to purchase it. SBE is our next one. Now this is one of those SPACs. It's an energy acquisition corporation, so I view these a little bit riskier because they're not necessarily pure plays. They don't have their own company. They're looking to buy them, or maybe they've purchased one. But you can't deny the bullishness of this pattern right here. It came down intraday to that rising 20-day moving average. This is not for the faint of heart. Look at this. This went from 25 to 34 in a couple days, but also went from 42 to 34, back to 39, back to 25, and up to 32. So maybe it's going to make another higher low first before it gets going. The point is, it's a highly speculative stock the way it trades. I would say keep an eye on it. It's currently at this prior band of support, which is maybe offering some supply. So I'd really like to see maybe a quick shakeout in here and then see the volatility constrict. This is why it's a B-list stock. It's really not quite ready to go yet. Another B lister is FUV. I had a massive trade in this one, and I put it on Twitter right as it started moving right in here, I believe. I don't remember the exact date. It might have actually been right here. Anyways, FUV. Here's our weekly chart. It's coming off of all-time highs just here in the last couple weeks, and it's doing so with the perfect volume pattern, up on increased volume, lighter volume on the pullback, showing that there's not a lot of rush to get out of it. Here's something I had previously drawn in that didn't develop, so I didn't take that trade. So let's draw in another potential scenario. And that's, I'm glad I had that other drawing in there, because I want you to see that just because I draw it in there doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. These are potential scenarios. So in this one, maybe it runs up like this, and then in a day or two it does this. And then as it breaks this little band of resistance, we then set our stop underneath this most recent relevant higher low, and then we could get a rally up towards this volume weighted average price. Maybe it slows down there and consolidates a little bit, and then off to the races. These are the types of stocks that can still have massive runs into the end of the year. LI is another one. This is a Chinese one, and it's pulled back pretty deeply here so far. We can look at the volume weighted average price from the IPO is that blue line. So maybe it continues down towards that level before it establishes support. On the 30-minute time frame, we've still got a pretty clear pattern of lower highs and lower lows below declining 5-day moving average. So I'm not really quite interested in this one yet. It's going to need more time. Perhaps again it gets towards that volume weighted average price from the IPO, starts doing something like this, creates a little bit of a base. You don't need to be first to profit in these things. The people who are buying these pullbacks are getting hurt badly so far. Let's let the market settle down, buy them as they emerge from a low risk consolidation and the trends are aligned on multiple time frames. Keep an eye on it, but it's certainly not ready. You can say the same thing for XPENG. XPEV is the symbol here. Still clearly a pattern of lower highs and lower lows with a declining 5-day moving average, and the volume weighted average price from the IPO down near 41. That could be tested. That's 8 points lower. That's 20%. Don't buy pullbacks. Let other people buy pullbacks. Here are 4 pieces of garbage to stay away from in this group. They are broken. They are horrible. Don't look for the bounces in HYLN or in KNDI or in Nikola or in Workhouse. This one maybe can reset up, but it's going to take more time. Anyways, that's a quick look at the EV stocks. Hope it was helpful. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.